Guys, it is 6:30 and I am going to call our special meeting to order. This is a special meeting and not a regular meeting, so we will move directly into approval of today's agenda.
I move that we accept the agenda.
Okay, seconded. Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. All right, we are going to go directly into action items. We have one on the docket today, a job description for transportation manager. Dr. Russell?
Chair Taylor, Trustees, Director of Operations, Mr. Stoffer is here to share some information around a transportation manager. This position has to do with our new busing contract and RFP that we're moving forward, and he's going to share some more information about that.
Trustee Taylor, Board of Trustees, in your packet, we've provided a couple of pieces of information for two job descriptions. This is, again, as Dr. Russell mentioned, in relationship to our ongoing RFP for busing transportation. Part of the components that we put into the RFP is we would be managing routes and we would be managing discipline and managing that customer service component for the bus company. These are the positions that would be dedicated to providing those services for the Nampa School District and the Nampa community. And so I'm just here to propose those to you and answer any questions that you may have in relationship to those postings of those or the job descriptions that we've provided you.
Thank you, Mr.
So I
Stoffer.
don't know why I raised my hand.
Yeah, Trustee Kirkman, please. I loved it. It actually was very helpful.
Chair Taylor, I'm sorry. These are two different positions, right?
Correct.
Okay. And I apologize. I didn't get to the board packet today before when it was posted. I didn't have time to read it, but anyways, that was my question. I just wanted
Trustee Taylor, would you like me to give you a synopsis of both of those?
It would be good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And while you do that, because I have a request as well, can you also lay out some of the funding that comes with these positions, just
Yep.
so that everybody's on the same page of now that we're making these changes, where that funding comes from and what those two positions look like? Thank you.
Absolutely. So the transportation manager is basically overseeing the responsibilities of all the department and will be their main objective also will be the routing component and working with our software to generate the appropriate busing routes, stops, times, and making sure that all of our routing is aligned to the needs of the district. They will also oversee the two customer service transportation positions. So they'll have some managerial responsibilities of doing their observations. The customer service representatives for the transportation department will be working both as a liaison between the Nampa School District and the contracted busing company in relationships to parent concerns, parent questions, also the discipline component that does happen on buses. These will be our liaisons that will be acquiring that information, providing it to our VPs and our deans to be able to help out with issuing the appropriate responses for student behavior on buses. So the customer services will be our front line to communicate directly with our parents, and we'll have that ability to work with them and with the schools when it comes to trips, activities, and so forth. They'll be handling a lot of those pieces to make sure that we get them in correctly and we have them routed for each of those individual needs.
Will the transportation manager oversee the fleet, or is that maintained by maintenance?
Chair Taylor, Trustee Kirkman, that's a great question. That's still the responsibility of our contracted busing company, whomever we receive. They will be overseeing the management of the maintenance of the buses, handling of all the buses. That will still remain as part of the RFP. So the in-house components are more of the front-facing components, and the routing is our design to bring those in. The discipline, routing, and the front-facing component now shifts to the district off of the busing company in our previous contracts.
So I appreciate that clarification, but let me rephrase my question. The Nampa School District fleet, like the trucks, the cars, that kind of stuff, will that fall under the transportation manager, or is that going to still fall under wherever it is now?
Yeah, Trustee Taylor, Trustee Kirkman, the fleet will still fall underneath currently it's underneath still one of my departments, but underneath maintenance, because that's where most of our fleet is. Okay. So it will still fall underneath that component there. They will not be overseeing that fleet at this time. At least that was not the intent of this. It was busing. Okay. We believe that from what we have gathered from our constituents around and our partners around in different districts, they believe that this position is going to be very, very busy, and to add that at this current time would not be a part of the plan.
Okay.
Now, we could adjust, and we'll see how it
Later
goes.
on,
Yep.
see how it works.
Trustee Sue?
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Um, the cost of all of this, just really for the folks that are listening at home,
Sure.
and to refresh our memories. I mean, we're looking at with per scene benefits, we're looking at a little over $200,000 in costs, right, for these employees. How much are we talking about savings in terms of taking that away from the busing companies?
Yes, that's a great question, Trustee Sue, and I'll do my best to describe it. I did give you some graphics in some previous correspondence that will help you with that, but I'll do my best to describe that. The genesis of it is you have to understand our current structure of how we're reimbursed with our current contract. Right now, all of these positions are kind of lumped in to our current contract. They actually have about 8 positions that do this responsibility for the Brown Bus Company currently. There is also other assignments that those 8 positions have. So getting a quick, clear cut of what it currently is to what it could be is there's some estimations that we put in, and you can see that on your screen. So these are the estimations that we provided off of the information that we do have from our connections with our current provider. So again, there's currently 8 positions that do what we're talking about. There is a rough estimate because there are other assignments. You can see what the cost is. Over 380,000 is what we project some of those costs are based off of their benefits, their hourly, weekly, and yearly costs. And so you can see the grand total. Now our costs, and they'll be on the next tab, Tyler. We are looking at the 3 positions, and you can see our estimated costs that we have on there. Part of that will be dependent because of their years of experience and who applies. There could be some fluctuation based off of years of experience. We're hoping that we can recruit and find an experienced router to be able to help us in the transportation manager position. So we used not the lowest end numbers, we used some median numbers so that the board would have some good information on what some of those projections would be. We did incorporate the benefits that are in there as well. And so you can see the overall cost for the 4 versus the 3 that we're proposing. Now, this is where the potential structure comes in from the reimbursements that we receive from the state. Currently, we get a percentage, and it's around 50. It changes from year to year, about 55 to 57% or 60% reimbursement off of our contract. And it changes because of there's a pocket of money, and that percentage is based off of your size and how everything is submitted. And the state gives that a year a year after we submit our information. So it's a year in reverse, if that makes sense. So what we will be able to do with these particular positions is that there's 2 reimbursement codes that we can for these particular positions. We get 35% automatic reimbursement off of the salary, and then we get 85% of reimbursement based off of the benefits. So our benefits are our reimbursement is a little bit higher than what we're getting off of. When you combine those 2 together, it's higher than what our general reimbursement is on the overall contract as we currently have it constituted. So there is a double benefit for the district. One is the ability to control the routes, which we have not had that, and that's been a source for both the district, the board, and our constituents have talked a lot about having more control and flexibility to change our routes based off of our current needs and our year-to-year needs. Second one is there is some financial benefit because we're able to recoup a little bit more money off of those positions through the current reimbursement process that the state has.
And I think that there's a third component to that overall we're planning on having a contract that comes in at a lower amount. So we're saving money and bringing
top of that,
position,
yes.
correct. So
Yes.
there's a 3-way.
There's a 3-way. And that goes back to my initial statement about what these positions are actually for. So the routing, the front-facing component of the district, and the discipline are all the things that are coming out of the contract that we are assuming the responsibility for. And that's why they're lower rates, and we have a higher reimbursement to push those down as well.
Understood. Trustee Benz has a question, and I just don't want to hijack it.
Yeah, no, I part of what I was going to ask was about that reimbursement. Thank you for reminding us about how that worked. And the other part, when if you go up to the top of this page, I believe it is, the customer service position and the lead supervisor position are the 2 job descriptions that we're looking at, but total, we're looking at hiring 3 individuals to fulfill. Okay.
Chair Taylor, Trustee Benz, that is accurate. So when we put this together, we hadn't determined the names of the actual positions at that point in time, and we're in the process of creating what you now have in front of you.
Okay. And then, sorry, Chair Taylor, do you mind?
Please.
if I- Okay.
Please, please.
So then the way that this is envisioned, instead of 2 separate functions, the customer service function would be underneath the umbrella of whoever is the transportation person. It's not like one person just does the routes and the other person does all the, okay, understood. Thank you.
So, Chair Taylor, help me understand this a little bit more. So we started off with 2 positions, transportation manager and customer service representative. Now we're looking at a lead supervisor and 2 customer service individuals. So 3. So is the lead supervisor the transportation manager?
Chair Taylor, Trustee Kirkman, that was the clarifying I was trying to clarify with Trustee Benz, is that when we put this out, this was a little bit ahead of the time that we had actually provided the actual titles. So the transportation manager that you have in front of you is that top line where it says lead supervisor.
That's
That is
one
the
and same.
transportation
One and the
manager. They are
same.
one and the same. The customer service is the customer service representative for transportation. There are 2 of those positions, but 1 job description is the same job. But there are 2 individuals that will carry that piece out.
Both 40 hours?
Correct.
And then trustees, these are not positions that the district has ever had. So this
Correct.
is in front of us
Yeah,
because
they're
we,
brand new.
yeah, they're brand
brand
new
new.
positions. Correct.
Chair Taylor, just Mr. Stoffer, maybe you could share one of the things that we realized by talking with some other school districts who have recently done RFPs around bus contracts is that our current contract is very unique.
Mhm.
There are very few districts that actually have managers built into the contract and have discipline built into the contract and have customer service built into the contract. Maybe you could speak about talking with some of the other districts that when they pull these positions out, what they saw around the drop in their contracts.
Yeah, Chair Taylor, to expand on what Dr. Russell is talking about, we have been, this has been an education. There's been a lot that we have been learning through this process. Lots of time and energy has been put into collaborating with our other partners here locally. We've had great partners in West Ada and Boise that have been really helping us and in teaching us some of the things that they've learned through their process. What Dr. Russell alluded to is when we saw most of the schools have seen a marketed decrease in behavior on buses because they had their building administrators were now responsible for handling the administration. They had that connection. Parents already had that connection. Whereas currently our contract is Brown Bus is issuing some of those disciplines. And so Brown Bus is having to talk to parents. And how that cycle works, there has been, and we have been continuously working on it, a lag in information as it comes back to schools. In this format, it's going through the schools directly through them so that they're handling it to the parents. So there's no 2 entities or 3 entities that are involved in the potential discipline and the communication that comes from the busing company. It really does streamline it, and they recognize that that was one of the huge benefits that they saw out of it is they did see some decrease in some behavior. There are some behavior that didn't decrease, but they did see some behavior decrease because it was handled at the school level and the communication was more apt and dialed in with people who had built relationships with parents. The other part we did see is the overall contracts, because the amount of personnel that busing companies needed to employ to have that front-facing component, they didn't need all those positions, and so it helped drop their contract down.
Trustee Benz and then Trustee Kirkman.
Okay. Thank you, Trustee Chair Taylor. Can you please, this may be a bit of a tangent, but can you remind me about the software component? Because that was part of the sticking point. If this is going through us now, the communication is going through us, will parents be notified via Parent Square that, little Johnny is on the bus or didn't make it today or?
Oh, the tracking component?
Yeah.
So Chair Taylor, Trustee Benz, this is actually one of the unique components. It won't necessarily be Parent Square. We're working on some of those components, but there is a notification and a much more prompt notification component and a parent app that will be much more in tune with what we envisioned originally. That component I'm working on right now. So we have seen samples. I'm actually in the process of building that, and I'll have a much better presentation for you on that probably in a couple weeks. Currently, I'm spending 2 days a week in training with on this software, and that's another reason why I'm hoping you approve this transportation manager, so I can get some assistance on that and building this through. But we will have some samples for you. It is a much more enriched environment from everything that we have seen. We have had the same responses from our partners that have used this type of software as well. They're seeing a much higher reliability in the GPS coordinating, and it's a much more friendly system.
Thank you.
Trustee Kirkman?
Yeah, I would imagine that at the beginning of the school year, there's going to be a couple of calls from
Couple.
parents with some concerns about the busing.
A couple.
We can anticipate.
Hundreds.
Mhm.
The customer service 1 and 2, so you got 2 positions there. Is the thought behind the 2 positions, one covering maybe secondary schools and one covering elementary busing, or how does that break down between those 2 positions?
Yeah. Chair Taylor, Trustee Kirkman, our objective is to work with our transportation manager to look at how we want to coordinate that once we have them hired. There's a couple of ways to think about it. It could be a secondary route one, and there could be an elementary route one. The other one is to also divide the district into half. And these are your schools and your responsibility, both K through 12.
Sure.
So there's a couple different ways that we can look at it. That's one that I would like to leave really for our transportation manager, particularly if they have some good experience. I would like to pick their brain on that before we make that ultimate decision.
But having the 2 customer service positions, I can see how that would be extremely beneficial starting out. But as the year goes on, and as things settle down and get into the groove and all the kinks are kind of worked out, do you see a need at some point? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but down the road, I'm just a little bit worried about adding another position more than what we really, really have to.
So Chair Taylor,
I'm
Trustee
sorry,
Kirkman.
in light of the district AD, the district athletic director. Plus, I know we just hired on a communications. I know that position was already there. So there's questions, there's concerns coming from our constituents about, hey, why are they hiring all these people? So that's why I bring this question, is really what is the need possibly for 2 down the road?
So just really quick, I want to reiterate to you guys. So this is all a part of our bus contract still coming in under what we were hoping. So this is all part of us reducing that cost of that contract still, guys. These are just those components of the RFP. And I would counter that your customer service position is so important. I would not have a bench header. I can't imagine how it would go if we didn't have somebody to answer that customer service line, and having just one person while you have somebody who has to do routes and navigate that. I would say we definitely have to start with 2, if not always have 2. So I would see that a bit
Well, I
differently.
agree. Definitely start with
Yeah.
2, because like I said, even the first full year going into what we're going into, I'm just concerned about adding more
Totally.
positions and then finding out a year down the road, we have to revamp that position to something else, because you can't necessarily get rid of it. I mean, there's some protections.
I'm gonna let Courtney go and then I'll grab you. Is that okay? Or do you want it the other way
I'm
around?
Chair
sorry,
Taylor,
I thought he was going
Yeah,
to respond.
I was
Do you
gonna
mind
let
if
her
I
go.
answer his
I
question?
just wanted to make
Okay.
sure that trustees who didn't want to add on to that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'm just trying to make sure I can compartmentalize a lot of questions in there, a lot of discussion. So I want to make sure I answer those appropriately. So Chair Taylor and Trustee Kirkman, one of the things I would suggest or have us think about, one, we are talking about 4 current positions or 8 current positions that do this work. We're talking about 3.
Oh, I get that, yeah.
And so we're currently paying for 8. In a contract, we're currently paying for it. And
At
so,
the same rate as what this.
which we
these
showed you in
positions
the
are?
previous screen, and that's why there's a savings of.
But we don't know what the breakdown there is in the contract currently, what we're paying for, right? I mean, you can't, can you compare apples to apples of what the
Appreciate what you're
contract
saying.
person now
Yeah,
as to what the
it's
customer
not
service?
delineated in the contract. You are correct. It's not delineated, but we are talking about the workload. That's more or less what I'm referencing is the workload. Currently, there are 8 people carrying the load that we're looking at trying to incorporate 3 to do. So I think we got to keep that in perspective, that a current company that is utilizing that, that's what they need to do it, albeit they do have some additional responsibilities as far as monitoring the bus drivers and doing evaluation of the bus drivers, which we would not be doing in the current contract with these positions. And that's why we feel pretty comfortable with our discussion of other school districts as well. But to your point, we can reevaluate this in a year. And those two positions are hourly positions. They're not salaried and they're not contracted. So we have some opportunities there if we need to come back and visit, say, you're right. We only need one position to do this adequately. But with the startup of this year and the timing of it, I don't know how we do that without this staff right now.
Trustee Sue.
I echo Trustee Kirkman's concerns. I do recognize that we want to be fiscally responsible and that idea, but I think coming from a retail mindset, I think it's good to have that redundancy. Somebody may call in sick, life may happen, things may happen. My child is not responding. I better darn make sure that somebody picks up the phone on the first or second ring, right? And if we only had one person, I think 2 is a good start.
Yeah, not finding my child, I'd see right.
I don't think any of us disagree
Yeah.
that 2
It's
is
just
not a
the-
good start.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking down the road, a year later, can that position be moved into the classroom?
So Trustee Taylor, Chair Taylor, Trustee Kirkman, remember that if we do that, then we lose the reimbursements that we're recuperating for that position. So that position no longer is the 30,000. It's now back to the original amount because the reimbursements are lost.
But if
for
it
that
goes
position.
into a classroom, the ROI on a teacher in the classroom,
Yep.
rather than the 30,000 reimbursement.
Totally understand that. So just more for clarity
Sure.
that we lose the reimbursements off of that. So in encumbering that, when we look at it as a 1-for-1, it's not a true 1-for-1, but it does
Yeah.
open up those dollars.
The
Yes.
reimbursements, it certainly helps us make it more palpable.
Trustee Benz.
Yeah, and this may be something a little bit farther down the line, but it would be nice to kind of start thinking about with all these changes. These are a lot of changes. I know we've mentioned that several times, but this is particularly a lot of changes with the busing system.
Mhm.
100%.
And so how are we going to evaluate our success in these changes? More than just the savings on the bus contract, how are we going to know, are we getting the balance right? Are we being successful in this endeavor?
So trustees,
Yeah.
Dr. Russell and I have been talking about a work session that might be held at the end of summer so we can have that exact conversation
Okay.
because we think we're going to be navigating a lot of changes. And if we don't mind, just for time's sake,
No,
and we just have this one thing, if we can keep that to then, but we will coordinate with you guys on all of that because we agree there'll be a lot to navigate next school year.
However, to Trustee Ben's question, is there any response from, at this point?
Chair Taylor, Trustee Kirkman, Trustee Benz, I think you're absolutely right. We do need to put those. That's a healthy HRS system that we've been talking about. And I think that is something that we definitely need to do. If we're looking at what our mission is and how we are approaching all of these things, we do need to have those things in place. I think one of the things that could be discussed in a work session is what is it that the board feels would make this a successful change, and hearing from you as well, talking to our community. I imagine there's a lot of different variables that we can look at. We can look at the app program. How is that helping people? I think there's a place for us to look at that. I think we can look at the customer service component. How do you feel about how we are responding to things? There's a lot of variables that we can measure. We can measure discipline. Is discipline being a little bit better now that we've inserted ourselves more directly into this piece? So I think those are great questions. I think it's ones that we collaboratively need to go through and find out what do we want that to look like, and then we can work with that. So it's definitely part of our system that we want to continue to approach.
Trustees, any other questions for Mr. Stuffer?
I do have one.
Please, Trustee Jennings.
So currently with the disciplines within the busing company themselves, any discipline handed out, is it bus riding oriented, where now that the staff, the administration will be in charge of these disciplines, is it going to fall over to an academic suspensions and those sort of things as far as schooling goes, or is it still going to be, this happened on the bus, we're going to treat it as it was on the bus, and does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm. Chair Taylor, Trustee Jennings, I believe it makes sense. I'll try to answer it for how I understood it. We already have within side of our system the protocols of how to handle behavior, whether it's a minor behavior or a major behavior. So we have those things already in our system. The busing will add another layer to it, where I think it could be a mix of the two. For minor components, I think that's something that we can handle during the day. Like, Johnny, you're going to spend 5 minutes with me at recess, 10 minutes. And I'm not suggesting that that's it, but just giving you kind of an example that there's some opportunities that we can handle those in a very quick and appropriate way. Stop jumping through seats. That's one that you get a lot, is you have a kid that bounces seats, and we see a lot of those. You have other ones which are more significant and which do lead to bus dismissal for a period of time. And I think that's definitely still within our purview of being able to take away that opportunity and privilege if it's not used appropriately in the appropriate circumstance. So I think we already have a system in place. This just gives us a little bit more breadth and width of how we would handle those things. And I also think particularly for our minors, it helps us a lot more to be able to work with those kids in our minor events and getting them before they accumulate to these majors, where we're seeing kids dismissed for a significant amount of time in the current conditions.
I agree.
Trustee Taylor, I have one final question.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, so even currently, we do have some academic enforcements with, so the bus company.
At a certain
talking
level.
Okay.
Yep, at a certain level, yes.
What my final question is timeline. So we have 2 job descriptions that we're looking at approving today. We know that the bus contract is out for bid. Our timeline in terms of hiring for these positions in conjunction with the bus contract, do they come together? Do we know, is it chicken and egg type thing? What about timeline?
Chair Taylor, Trustee Binns, the timeline that I have right now is if the board does approve these positions, then I will post them probably immediately. Part of the buildup and the scale up for us to be able to take on the new contract is going to need particularly the transportation manager within the appropriate timelines and finding the right person. So by state statute, we have 5 days that we would post. We would look at the candidates. After that, we would start the interview process and try to find the best candidate and narrow it down. So I think you're looking at best 2 weeks after approval and posting is probably the best that we would have somebody. And then you have the processes of orientation. So for that position, that would be my priority of getting that person on board as quickly as possible to familiarize themselves with our new software, to help us be engaged in knowing what our needs are as a district. That would be critical. So that would happen before hopefully right around the time the bid is awarded, somewhere in that time frame. The new bus company would be taking on, or whoever wins the contract, I should say, would be taking on July 1st is when they would be starting to work with us. So the other positions I would like to bring on as quickly as possible as well, but they have a different priority in my mind. The primary is we need to engage in getting that manager hired. Does that answer your question?
Prior to the start of the new contract with.
Well, it'd probably be right along those same time, just looking at our
Towards the end
timeline
of
and
June.
proper procedure of getting through all that. They're going to come in at the right time if the board chooses to approve these. They will be somewhere around that same timeline.
Thank you.
Quick question, Chair Taylor.
Let me go with Trustee Sue really quickly.
Oh, I'm
No.
sorry.
I haven't.
Oh, was that
Oh.
not you? Okay, was that your
I
hand?
think it was me.
Was it your hand? Okay, sorry.
I have a
Sorry. Okay, sorry. And I'm using my peripheral.
Just thinking about the handbooks, policies, any of that kind of stuff. Will any of that need to be changed with us taking over that, with the new contract, or us taking on these positions in-house? From what I remember, it's all pretty general language.
Mhm.
Okay.
So Chair Taylor, Trustee Kirkman, we might find that we want to do something in the future. I think currently the way our handbooks are structured, they are general and they
We're
give
good.
us some of those. I think we're good because it does mention some of that discipline from buses does come into.
But it's not specific to the contractor will handle this,
Yeah.
so on and so. Okay,
Yeah.
that's all I want to make sure if we have to get to that.
So as we're probably going to learn some things. I think we have to be
I
open
would
about that.
imagine
We'll
so.
learn some things in this process and we may need to come back and address some of those things as we learn about them.
Right. First things first, then.
Well, if I may say last thing, I think this is, yeah, I think this is a great idea. I think for the folks who are listening in, for the government hawks that are paying attention. We're going from a $400,000 expenditure down to 220 with the potential of multiple kickers from the state in terms of reimbursement, which is much lower. And we get this service much closer to home. So I think this is a great opportunity.
I just wanted to do that too. There's been a lot of fiscal conversations talked about, and I get that because we made a lot of fiscal choices, but this particular choice was made to reduce our cost, and every option that you brought forward has continued to reduce our cost. So I just want to make sure, like, I totally get it, but in this particular situation, we will have to make changes that will involve the expense. But when we're reducing cost, I think we're moving in the right direction. So I really want to ditto what Jason said. Sorry, I did not
No.
intend to make that comment. I'm sorry,
No,
Jason. I
and-
really wanted to let
and
you do it.
honestly,
I'm sorry. I'm
And
sorry.
being fiscally responsible doesn't necessarily mean you're just going to the bare
Right.
bones, cheapest everything. It's being
Fiscally
it's being
res-
responsible with the taxpayer money. And so I do see that. And I appreciate bringing this in-house. That gives us more full control also. Before we go to a possible motion here, though, I would like just to reiterate, I am for this. I'm not against the two customer service representatives and the transportation manager. I appreciate what you brought. I just think that down the road, a year or so, we reassess, and I'm sure you're going to be doing that probably on a weekly basis.
And trustees, I
And then
also
we
want to
reassess it.
throw out that these are some of the things that we're even considering talking about in the work session, because I'm sure that we're going to want updates next year. I would imagine is going to be a lot of updates.
So on that note, I don't have a motion in front of me, but I'll make one anyways. I make a motion that we approve the job descriptions for transportation manager and customer service representatives. One transportation manager, whatever that may be called, lead supervisor, and two customer service representative positions.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Does that, with pigeonholing amounts, if they don't end up needing to, will they have to hire two? Because he said two. Clerk Lamont. Sorry.
But that's what's being
That's what's
requested.
presented and
Yeah.
requested.
Okay, so
Yes.
it's fine. Okay, perfect. I just was making sure. Okay, so motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Stoffer. All right, guys, that was our only action item. Oh, I'm sorry. That was our only action item before executive session. Sorry. So I will entertain a motion to move us into executive session.
Madam Chair, I propose that we move into executive session per Idaho Code 742061 B and D. B, to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent or public school student. D, to consider records that are exempt from disclosure as provided in Chapter 1, Title 74 of Idaho Code.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Trustee Taylor?
Aye.
Trustee Kirkland?
Aye.
Trustee Sue?
Aye.
Trustee Benz?
Aye.
Trustee Jennings?
Aye.
All right, we have left executive session and we are back in regular session, and we now have an action item on the table. Trustee Benz?
I move to approve the completion of the superintendent evaluation.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made in second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. All four are yays. Meeting is adjourned.
I voted 3 times.